That's why these two guys here, these are the men I want as my friends. They're the new blood.
It's that time, everyone, for another episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast, the Doc and Jock Show. Joining me is my cousin, Adam Strozinski.
I'm a man of the people.
I am the Doc, John Macaroon. We are ready to deliver another great podcast. We got a great show this week, highlighted by some great news that we're going to share in just a few moments. But first of all, cuz, how are you today?
Oh, I can't complain, man. I'm feeling pretty good. How you doing?
Man, I'm feeling really good. I mean, the podcast, I think, is at a certain level right now, but I just think that the announcement that we're going to make in just a few moments, the podcast is going to go to a whole nother level, and I'm just so excited. Like I said, when we started this project, our goal was just to banter and have a way to talk sports with the ability to talk to different people, different experts, and maybe different people that know more about sports than we do and things like that. But the project has taken on a life of its own, and I'm so excited to announce that the Doc and Jock Show, the two guys, the two family members, the two cousins who bring the noise are now going to collaborate with the Detroit Sports Nation. Well over 90,000 likes on Facebook. And I just was like, you know what? I want to collaborate with these guys. These guys are insightful. These guys have a great presence on social media. And if we can find a way to work together, I would love to take advantage. And so I reached out, and one of the co-founders, Jeff Bilbrey, got back to me and was like, you know what? You guys got a good podcast. You got a good presence on social media. We'd love to have you on the team. And so we are going to collaborate with the Detroit Sports Nation. You're going to be hearing a lot from Doc and Jock, and we look forward to it. It's all good, cuz.
For those who don't know, they have a great presence online. They've got a great website, a ton of content, some of the best writers around, basically delivering you information from a fan's perspective. So everything that you sit there and you bitch about with your buddies, these guys are talking about it and they're trying to give it to you. So great content, great website. I think this is going to be something really good for both of us. I think this is going to be awesome.
And so, like I said, the Detroit Sports Podcast, we're trying to grow this every single week, and we have a chance to now collaborate with some great writers and fans of all the Detroit sports teams. You're going to be hearing from the co-founder himself. Jeff Bilbrey will be on this podcast later on, and we're going to talk about, a little bit about how they started and what their goal is and things like that and how we got to collaborate. And also on this podcast, we are going to definitely hit on the NBA Finals. We're going to touch on a moment that happened Tuesday night when Miami got blown out by San Antonio. After the game, I was watching the press conference, and Erik Spoelstra is up there, and one reporter came out and just kind of asked an interesting question that led to a simple one-word answer. And so Adam and I, later on in the podcast, are going to talk about press conferences, this guy's question. We're going to play a round of The Doctor is in Session. The King of the Couch is ready to deliver. The Jock has 3 questions lined up, and he is ready to pick my brain regarding all sports topics, and I'm looking forward to it. Because, just to let you know, your insurance has run out, and so you're going to have to pay out of pocket for this Doctor's in Session. So,
show me the money.
If you slip me a $5 bill,
show me the money.
I'll have no problem giving you extra great Detroit sports content.
Don't I have Medicaid or Medicare or something like that? Don't you take those?
Nope. I'm going to accept cash, so you slip me a crisp $5 bill, and the King of the Couch will deliver for the podcast.
Sounds good.
You got to hit up a little copay now and then. The good doctor can't just be giving this stuff out for free.
All right, buddy, let's jump into this and let's get this started.
Before we get started, I heard your interview on another show, and a quick note about the Jock. He does tend to have some anger issues, and so I'm listening. I'm excited. He just on the Twitter, I'm on this show. It's great. I'm going to be talking about.
I like you say on the Twitter, like you're my grandpa.
Is it Manny Machado? And you were talking about his anger in terms of throwing the bat, and then you go to proceed to tell a story of how you lost control once on the ice. You're an avid hockey player. Just share with the audience what you did when you were upset. It was classic. I was like, what?
All right, so it's a playoff game, and we're getting our butts handed to us.
Street hockey, right?
No, it's inline roller.
Roller hockey,
yes.
Okay.
So we're getting our butts handed to us, and it's a disaster. We should beat this team, no problem, but we're getting flexed. It's horrible. So I go to take a face-off. On the face-off, I get hauled down and tripped. At this point, I just pretty much had enough. And the puck goes along the boards. I just lose it. I end up just attacking the other player, try throwing them into our bench. This then causes 3 of their guys to jump on top of me. I have a referee who has me in a UFC submission hold. Somehow I got out of that. As I get out of that, I go back to attacking this player, and I get put back into the submission hold, just getting choked out at this point. Like, my face is basically about as red and purple as you can get because I'm just fighting it the whole way. And you know when you fight it, it just sinks it in tighter. So things kind of calm down a little bit, and as I'm getting escorted off, some guy just kind of starts chirping at me, running his mouth, and I had my fill. So I took my helmet off, and I smashed him in the face with my helmet.
What the hell is that about?
This was a very sad and disappointing day for me, for my hockey team. It still gets talked about. They still bring this up, especially in the locker room. It was very embarrassing for me. I ended up having to sit out an entire season as a result of my actions. That was my suspension. Yeah, it wasn't very good. This happened probably about 3 years ago, so I wasn't even a young man. I was older. It's horrible. I'm embarrassed to be talking about it.
The Jock of the DocNJock show couldn't control his anger in inline hockey, got himself suspended for 1 year, and this is the guy I'm doing the podcast with. Should I be scared over here? I mean, I usually don't bite my tongue, and I'm usually sarcastic with you, clowning on you on your Twitter, you all dolled up and looking pretty on your Twitter. You're not going to come over here and whoop me, are you?
No, I don't have these rage issues with you, so it just they tend to come out when
because usually when I'm tweeting, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make fun of Jock. I'm like, how's he gonna take this? Like, is he gonna come over here one day and just pummel me? Because I know you got this in you, but you've calmed down. I will give you credit. You have calmed down. You're not as rageful as you have been in the past, so that's good. But cause really, seriously,
it really happened.
It really happened. Huh?
I've got about 15 or 20 people who will vouch for this story. Wow. So they might even fill in some extra details for you.
Nice. Well, like we said, Jeff is calling in as we speak, so we're looking forward to chatting regarding the Detroit Sports Nation, and Jeff's on the line. On the line, we have one of the co-founders of the Detroit Sports Nation. Adam and I are big sports fans, and when we started this project, we definitely seen the influence of the Detroit Sports Nation on Facebook with well over 90,000 likes. And joining us is the co-founder, Jeff. How are you tonight, Jeff? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us a little bit about the Detroit Sports Nation and how it came to be, and what's your role?
Basically, as I say on the site, it happened in a bar over some beers. I had just met Anthony. He had some ideas for a bar website. If you don't know, he owns the Hamlin Corner down in Royal Oak. And so we were talking about a totally different idea, and said, what would be kind of cool is if we had a sports website where the fans really had a voice in what was said. And I kind of took that and ran with it, and developed different platforms over the years. We started in 2010, from message boards to chat to basically anything that you could possibly use as a venue to get the word out there. And really, we found nothing compared with the ability of Facebook to get the word out. On social media in general, but Facebook's really our loudest voice. While we still have the website, we scaled that back from where anybody could create a blog on our site to just advertising and getting the best writers that we could get out of the group of people out there that really wanted to say something, and then giving them that platform to speak. So that's really the heart of what Detroit Sports Nation is.
When Adam and I, like I said, Adam and I are family, and we definitely talk sports all the time at family gatherings during our annual fantasy football draft. And we just said, why don't we just do a podcast? This podcast thing is taking off. And so since we've done it, we've just had a great time. And our goal is just to talk sports with anybody locally in the area that has a voice. And this collaboration is going to be great. We really look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys got a great presence on social media, and you got a really good podcast. So I think together that definitely will be able to take it to the next level.
You said that you have a lot of different writers. Do they come to you? Do you search out writers? And how often do they present material on the Facebook page?
So what's really interesting is the dynamic of the writers that we have. So everybody works for free, even me. We don't earn anything, even though we got ads on there. We're not really pulling any more than what's paying the bills. That's slowly been evolving over the years, but really, we all have full-time jobs. So until I have a marketer on hand, that's where that's going to go. So right now, we put it out there whenever we see a hole in coverage. saying, hey, does anybody want to talk about Tigers? We have a platform for you. You know, as long as you can competently write and form a solid idea, we're going to give you a chance because we can develop talent. So the biggest challenge that we've had over the years was the Lions. It's huge Lions town, and we couldn't find anybody to write Lions. It was usually me, and that's my favorite sport out of all of them. So I'd be out there on Sunday, and I'd be live tweeting the game and do a wrap-up article. But 3 kids and a full-time job, I just didn't want to have to do it. Plus, running the website. So finally, we put the call out for we need some help, and we brought on a guy last year. He's a really good writer. He does some coverage for a wrestling site that he has on the side, and we gave him the chance to kind of assemble the Avengers of football. And so we brought on a couple more guys this year, and they're really gearing up. So we're hoping that this year's Lions coverage is really going to be the top Lions coverage in the area, because with the amount of fans that we have that opportunity. So they're preparing, they're reviewing the different press releases. We're trying to get them press passes to get back and get on the field and all that. I don't know if you saw it, but I just did that with the Tigers. It was pretty cool. So, we'll see where that goes.
So is it safe to say that the content that you guys get, it's from, I guess, fans then?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we take the average everyday guy and try and amplify that out, because that seems to represent what the majority of fans think. So if you look at the comments on our website or on our blog, they're mostly representative of the way our writers speak. So it's very positive. We don't really broadcast a lot of national stuff, and when they do disagree, we try and take that into consideration, and you can feel that through what our writers write.
So Jeff, what would you say the overall goal of Detroit Sports Nation, your online presence and your website presence? What is the goal of Detroit Sports Nation overall?
Really, it's to just make an impact, to beat out these cookie cutter sports sites that are out there that are just capitalizing on what the fans really want to say or what they really feel. So they only focus on those hot button issues. Well, we walk that line. We also want to cater to the soldier in Afghanistan who's missing home and needs to know what the Red Wings are doing or if the Tigers won. We want to be that channel, the connection to Michigan and Detroit sport, and act as a conduit for that.
And you guys are doing a great job. Like I said earlier, you guys have a great presence on Facebook, and your updates are definitely ones that we look to, especially during Tigers games. Now, when we initially spoke, you said, you're not that. You wanted to definitely talk about the Detroit Sports Nation, and that you wanted to leave the in-depth analysis to your writers. But we have you on, so we just want to ask a couple questions just to get a sense. Like I said, Adam and I, we like to do this podcast as if we were just two guys sitting at the bar, like you said, how your concept was founded, like just sitting around talking sports. So obviously you said you're a Lions guy, so that leads me to my first question. Do you just think that Matthew Stafford's the guy here in town? Is he the guy that's going to take us to the playoffs consistently?
I don't know. I think he's got the potential for it, but I just don't feel like he's ever going to get us there. And I don't know if he's just not listening to the coaches, but from what it appears is that from the last couple of years, the criticism that he's got, his mechanics definitely changed, how he was throwing the ball, and he's not making the adjustments that are needed. So I'm really looking forward to the new staff that's coming in because of just the different experience and the resumes they bring to the table. I think it might help to develop him to be a better player. We'll see. This is going to be the telltale right here. If he can't get us at least into the playoffs this year, they need to move on.
Okay. How passionate and how hopeful are you to stick with the Lions? Because, like I said, Adam and I are long-time suffering Lions fans, and sometimes we get accused of being a little bit overly critical and overly sensitive with the Lions. But, just like everyone here in Detroit, we're passionate fans. We want them to win so bad that sometimes it just comes across as overly critical. And some people in the media have just said, listen, save yourselves the headache, just go Lions free. But Adam and I like to beat our heads against the wall, and we continue to support the team. How much hope do you have, and how much more can you take if they don't deliver, consistent playoff runs in the future?
Hey, man, till I move out of state, which is never, I'm a diehard Lions fan. I'm always going to be there. I'm always going to be cheering on the team through the good and bad. I watched every single game of the 0-16 season. I I watched them when they went to the playoffs. So, yeah, I've always been a fan. I'm always going to be a fan.
Jeff, what was your initial reaction when the Lions selected Eric Ebron with their first overall pick? Because I lost my mind. I'm going to be honest. I came on this show and I blew up.
Are you effing kidding me is what I said. I mean, once I dug into it a little bit more and learned about the theory behind selecting him and basically the New Orleans style offense that they're going to go with, and the fact that he's not just a tight end, he's basically a receiver. So the draft is one thing I prepare to watch for every single year. It's my Super Bowl next to the Super Bowl, right? So when I saw him selected, I was really disappointed. I was like, well, here it goes. They've already blown it because I had a lot of hopes for Xander to have an impact on the selections that they're making. So at the end of it, I just decided, you know what? It's a new regime. Let's see what they do with it. Let's see if they develop it and if they had a method to madness.
All right. Well, this is a little bit more, I guess, about you. So our listeners can maybe interact with, I guess, the head of Detroit Sports Nation. What is your favorite sport out of the Big Four in Detroit?
Well, the Lions. Used to be Red Wings. I went to the original 3 Stanley Cups that we hit. I was down and marching the streets in '97. Huge Red Wings fan, and I just kind of died out of it. I think fantasy hockey killed it for me, just having so many games, and football I could really kind of get immersed in, especially with my schedule. So I would say football.
All right. Well, there's a huge game going on Wednesday night, Stanley Cup, Game 4. Who do you think is going to win this game?
The Kings are going to take it.
Kings in a sweep, eh?
Yep.
My man. I was the only one riding the Kings train over here, sitting there blowing my horn, choo-choo, for the Kings. That was it. Everybody else wanted the Rangers around here.
I'm not a Kings fan by any means, but they're pretty tough, It's hard to not deny what they've built over there.
If you were to sit there and you were to compare the Kings, who are still fighting for the Stanley Cup, they're one game away, to our current goalie situation, how do you think those two compare? And is there any comparison there between, I guess, Jimmy Howard and Jonathan Quick?
I think Detroit is the hardest on their goalies and on the quarterbacks. I mean, it's just they're relentless. I don't think talent-wise there's a comparison between Quick and Howard. I mean, one is in the finals and one isn't. But Howard's still a solid goalie. He's still stood on his head many times. We're same with the monster. So I don't think there's a comparison there. I think Quick is the better goalie, but I think overall Detroit is way too hard on the goalies. I think the goalie is the least of our problems right now.
Yeah, Jeff, a lot of people, when we posted that earlier this afternoon on the page, have said, we need to focus on the defense, and maybe that the goalie is not really our biggest concern right now. But, in this league, a goaltender can ride you all the way to the finals. You've seen how dominant Quick is. He's obviously one of the best goaltenders in the league, and now the Kings are on the verge of taking 2 of the last 3 Stanley Cups. Do you think that Peter Mrazek, if he's showcased this year, could overtake Jimmy Howard? Because I think that, I put that on the page. I just think that, I think we've seen what we can from Jimmy Howard, and I just don't think that we can. I don't think that he's elite. I don't think that he can carry us if the defense breaks down. And so I think it's time maybe to consider a younger, maybe more agile goaltender.
Yeah, I think Howard's on the way out for sure. Once he started coming up, they were transitioning that way. But it was a learning process. Look how long it took Howard to lead in. But when you talk about Quick, you look at what Osgood had in front of him, right? So people talk all the time, Osgood's not a Hall of Fame goalie. He's one of the winningest goalies in history. But look who he had in front of him. He had Lindstrom in front of him. He had awesome line in front of him. So you got to take those other considerations. You got to look at the whole picture.
Jeff, don't sell yourself short, man. You can hang in with us, You said yourself you just wanted to talk about the DSN, but you're welcome here anytime. You can rap about sports, and like I said, Adam and I are really excited to be collaborating with the Detroit Sports Nation, and we are looking forward to collaborating and working and talking to several of the writers that you guys have. So thanks again for coming on, and thanks again for collaborating with us. It's going to we look forward to talking sports and going in depth with these teams of ours here in Detroit.
Awesome, man. Welcome to the team.
We appreciate it. Same here. So everyone out there, if you want to check out great sports content, search on Facebook for the Detroit Sports Nation, and you can go to their great website with tons of content on all the 4 teams at DetroitSportsNation.com. Jeff, have a great night. Thank you very much.
Yep, have a good one.
We want to thank Jeff for coming on. What a great collaboration. I mean, we can't tell you enough how excited we are to be collaborating with these guys, and we look forward to bringing you great content across different mediums on Facebook, on Twitter, on these podcasts, and you'll definitely be hearing more from the writers and from Jeff from the Detroit Sports Nation, so we're looking forward to that.
For a guy who says that he doesn't like to talk sports, he can really hold his own. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, like I said,
brains of the operation is strong there.
The reason why we love doing this podcast, and we keep saying it, is that we get a chance to interact with the fans and just talk sports. That's what it's about. We are passionate about Detroit sports, and we want to get our thoughts out every single week, and so that's why we love doing it. And as well, we love to give back and give shout-outs to fans of the podcast who message us. If you want to reach out to us on Twitter, that's probably the best way, at Detroit Podcast. And 2 listeners this week just came right out and messaged me and were like, we love the podcast. We're turning on people to your show. We really enjoy it. So we just want to give a shout out to Joe Dexter, at Joe Dexter on Twitter, JoeDexter. Thank you for messaging me. We appreciate your support. And also Brendan Ferguson, at Mr_BD61. Thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support. You get a shout out from the Detroit Sports Podcast. Stay tuned after the break. The Jock is going to reach in his pocket, pay his copay, and the King of the Couch is going to deliver in a great round of The Doctor is in Session. Stay tuned. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Detroit Sports Podcast. Like I said earlier, you can message us on Twitter to show your support at Detroit Podcast. You can go to our website, www.detroitsportspodcast.com. You can check out all our great content. You can find ways to download us and check out great deals. Father's Day's coming up. If you want great deals for your special loved one out there, great deals on sports memorabilia, sports tickets, everything related to Detroit sports. And also, cuz, if you're a fan of the World Cup, all 32 teams are represented by Adidas. And if you want to don the apparel like the teams in the World Cup, just click shop online at DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can find great deals on all sports jerseys and all teams that are represented in this year's World Cup. So good stuff there at the website, and we have great blogs too. So check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We would greatly appreciate it if you do that, because it's that time.
Let me get your copay ready.
You got the copay ready?
I got your copay.
Cash only, baby. Cash is king in this kingdom.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo, right here. I'm the man. Woo!
Thank you. I'm ready to do this, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to your questions.
So sticking with the World Cup, I'm glad you brought that up. With the World Cup starting on Thursday, June 12th, who do you have playing in the championship match?
You know, the good thing is I can honestly say I don't have the bracket in front of me, but I can tell you my favorites. This World Cup, I'm greatly looking forward to it. A lot of people will say, why do you guys talk soccer? This will be the 3rd consecutive week you guys are talking soccer.
Because we love this stuff. I'm wearing an Italy jersey right now.
Listen, for those fans that don't get it, I don't think we'll ever convince you. It's just a great sport, and you just either you get it or you don't. And so we're just talking right now to those fans that do get it. I'm a big fan of soccer. I wasn't early on, but now I am. And so I'm just looking forward to watching a lot of these teams and see where they're at in this World Cup. Obviously, the host country, Brazil, with Neymar, with Fred, they're a great team, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on these teams. If they lose, they're going to be a tough out, and it's their home country. I just don't know if a guy like Neymar, with all that pressure on him, is he going to be able to live up to that hype? Because he's only 22 years old, and he was now thrust in the limelight this year at FC Barca, and this year they went at the club and didn't win any trophies. So how's he going to handle an entire nation behind him? How's he going to handle the pressure? Is he going to be able to handle it? It's going to be interesting. But you got to go with the powerhouses. I mean, you got to like Spain, you got to like Germany, you got to like a team like Portugal. Those teams are going to be strong. And so the question is going to be this. Who's going to be able to handle the ups and downs in this tournament? Who's going to be able to rally at the key moments and come back? Because, soccer is such an emotional game. Sometimes you get down an early goal. How does your team respond? You have to go with a team from Europe. Obviously, there's other strong teams in the tournament. Now, because Jurgen Klinsmann came out and was like, he was asked, what do you think the U.S.'s chances are? And he comes out and he says, we have no chance. And so a lot of people were upset by his comment. Me? No, not so much. I wasn't
brought
upset.
that up. That was your second question.
Oh, was it really?
That was your second question. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, and
so go ahead. Do elaborate, please.
I'm not disappointed at all, because if you think the United States is going to win the World Cup, you got to be crazy. It's just he's still beginning the process. See, Jurgen Klinsmann's job is going to be to overhaul the U.S. system, because the U.S. style of play has to represent a different style. I mean, you can't be considered one of the powerhouses when you've only been to the quarterfinals of the World Cup once in the last 25 years. Come on now, and we're staring in the face of Ghana.
So bad hearing it.
Yeah, we're staring in the face of Ghana, who keeps eliminating us, and they're our first game. Now, can we make waves? I mean, he said it himself. The goal is to make it to the semifinals. I think, I'm not crazy here, but I think we have a strong chance if we can get the 3 points versus Ghana, get a 2-1 win out of the way, get those 3 points, try to play a defensive style and draw versus Portugal and Germany. Then you got a chance to advance. That is truly, we are in the group of death. Germany, Portugal, Ghana, and ourselves. So for us to get out of that is going to be very tough. But as long as we don't get crushed and dominated like we did in past World Cups where we came away with no wins, then I think Jurgen Klinsmann will be okay, because he is under contract until 2018. And so his job is to think long-term and to put together a program and bring in the players that are going to help us go deeper in future World Cups.
Just kind of, I guess, spin off that, since you, in the same question, answered your second question. When all is said and done, do you think Jurgen Klinsmann's thumbprint will be left on the U.S. men's national team? And do you think it will be better for bringing him in and letting him do what he wants to do and how he sees fit to build this program?
Mm-hmm. Now, there's two parts. Here's the first thing. Jurgen Klinsmann has won the World Cup as a player, and he was a dominating force in the early 90s. He won it with West Germany in 1990. Yes, and you can see it right away if you're paying attention to the roster. He is bringing up several multinationals. And so what that means is he's not just building a team full of Americans who are American-born. He's looking at individuals and players that have parents that are dual nationals. So that's an excellent thing. We got a young player in Julian Green, who is going to be featured at Bayern Munich in the future. He's going to be playing his club football there. And so he's going to be playing the best of the best. So the first thing he's got to do, he's got to get the U.S. players to really stop playing in the MLS. He's got to get them to play in Europe. That's where the best football is. That's where you can develop your talents. So that's going to be his first step. And the second step is going to be bringing together the best 23 players and maintaining a consistent style of attacking play and smart play. Because in soccer, it's not only one style of play that can dictate if you win or not. It's, can you defend? Can you play different formations? Can you adapt to different formations? And that's why the European clubs have so much success, is they can play multiple formations in a single half. They can bring in players, they can make adjustments on the fly, and they can still be competitive. And so that's going to be his job. It's going to be an overwhelmingly tough job, because the best players in the world don't play here. I just want him to have a U.S. team to have a good showing. That's my expectation. Win versus Ghana and draw versus Portugal and Germany. And that'll be a successful out of this World Cup, in my opinion.
Moving on. What are your thoughts on the New York Knicks bringing in Derek Fisher as their new head coach?
I just think that, the Knicks had egg all over their face by putting all their eggs in the Steve Kerr basket. And they made it known, hey, we want this guy. This guy's great. This guy's, obviously someone that can teach the triangle. And then he goes and signs with Golden State. So that was just a PR nightmare. The league is going towards bringing in players that have just retired. And Derek Fisher obviously has the respect of the players. His tenure there is going to be very tough because the Knicks are over the cap, and they're like the Pistons, they don't have any draft picks. So they got a big issue with Carmelo Anthony if he decides to opt out. They got players that are making way too much money, and they're way over the salary cap. So Derek Fisher is going to be given all the opportunity. He's going to be basically a figurehead for Phil Jackson. He's going to mold him into the coach, and they're going to run the triangle. He's going to be, Phil Jackson's going to have a lot of say. So I don't know if we're going to get a real sense of the coach that Derek Fisher is going to be, because basically, it's the perception is that he's Phil Jackson's lackey. So the Knicks' job, it's just going to be tough right now unless they can bring in free agents and they can convince Melo to take a pay cut, which he shouldn't do. He should just bust out. You know what? If you can't beat him, join him. So he should look to find a team that has more superstars, and that's what he should do. If he's there next year, I'd be kind of surprised, because if he's interested in winning, like he says he is, it's not going to be with the Knicks. They're going to be a rebuild, and they're going to be, it's going to be interesting to see. And your opinion, Who gets to the playoffs faster, the Pistons or the Knicks?
There's so much dysfunction on this Pistons roster right now, especially with guys like Brandon Jennings and Josh Smith. I think I'd rather take something that looks almost like a clean slate, what they have going on with the Knicks, and you can sit there and add to it, than what you have with the Pistons, where you're basically hamstrung with these contracts. So I'm going to say the Knicks, even though they do have a rookie coach who was, up until, 4 days ago, still a player. Do you think ever we'll see the days where we have basically a Reggie Dunlap type situation where you've got a player coach?
No, I don't think so.
For those who don't know, Reggie Dunlap, Slapshot, check it out. Great movie.
No, I don't think the days of player coaches are, you see it in soccer, but you don't see it too much in these, in the United States, too often player coaches. So, no, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I agree with you. I think that the Knicks probably will get to the playoffs sooner. I just think the Pistons are pretty much starting at 0. And Stan Van Gundy is going to have to bring in some talent and develop this talent. And it's just going to take a little bit longer, in my opinion.
All right, I got a bonus question for you if you'd like.
Sure, go ahead.
So Wednesday night, we've got Game 4 of the New York Rangers, Los Angeles Kings going on. All right, it's been a really good series, especially if you're a Kings fan. It's been a great series if you're a Kings fan. In order for the Rangers to push this to a Game 5 and possibly beyond, and possibly win this in 7 games, what do you think they have to do better in Game 4?
In order for them to win, they're going to have to bury their chances. I mean, early on, did you see that save in game number 3?
Quick just got the paddle of the stick down.
Exactly.
He had to reach behind him.
They needed to bury that to get the momentum going. And it's just really tough. Like I said, I try to, when I watch these series, when our teams are not playing in it, I kind of hearken to, okay, how do the Wings compare to these teams? And so obviously the Wings are most similar to the Rangers in terms of the European style of play. Their guys are a little bit smaller. The Kings are beasts. And so that's why Boston is so tough being in the East, is that we have kind of smaller players. And the Kings are just massive, and they're fast. They got the best goalie in the world. They're playing strong, and I mean, how
they have a high-scoring defense too, which is very rare that you ever see.
Exactly, and when you can come back from an 0-3 deficit, that is a great wave of momentum that should be able to carry you through the Stanley Cup. Coming out of the West was a feat in and of itself. 3 consecutive 7-game series, and so I'm kind of surprised with which the ease the Kings are dealing with the Rangers in terms of they're up 3-0 in the series. I just think that a couple things. In order for the Rangers to extend this series, they're going to have to bury their chances. They're going to have to get a little bit more luck in terms of all these deflections getting past Lundqvist is really surprising in terms of, he's an elite goalie, but none of the pucks are finding him. So that's going to be tough. Henrik Lundqvist isn't getting as lucky as he should. The power plays, they're not scoring enough goals, basically. And the reason why they're not scoring enough goals, Jonathan Quick's back there. If they show some pride and they win Game 4, look for the Kings to take it down in 5. I don't see it going much further. They're just too big, too strong, and it would be a miracle if the Rangers extend this to 7 games. I would consider it a miracle.
All right, well, that's all I got for you. Great job, Doc.
That's all good. And the good thing is, by not talking about the Tigers and the ills of
thank God we never talk about the Tigers.
We do recognize the Tigers are 6-15 in the last 21.
Hey, can I tell you what the best part about the whole Tigers, I guess, up until recent has been?
What's that?
The best part was them getting rained out on Tuesday, so I didn't have to watch that game.
Everybody's like, sigh of relief. Let's just not focus on them for one night.
Jesus.
And we're
horrible. It's hard to watch.
Yeah, we're taking a pass this week because we'll beat our heads over it. So hopefully the Tigers have a better week this next coming week. Otherwise, it might be time to further panic more than we already are. Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA and the press conference that happened after game number 3. All right, cuz, have you been peeking in on these NBA Finals? It's been a good series so far.
I've been watching, which is, I guess, weird because I don't really care for the NBA too much. But the finals have been really good. And
that's why I love doing this podcast. Last podcast, we spoke with Nate McRae, and he told us one of the keys to the series is going to be Kawhi Leonard. And when he disappeared in Game 2, that he took advantage, and then he came back in Game 3 with a monstrous performance because that was such a great game in terms of San Antonio's offensive execution. I mean, seriously, 76% shooting in the first half. They were on fire. But here's the thing. I'm not getting too high and too low with each game. I really truly believe it's going to be a 7-game series. And as each game goes by, I find myself going, wow, I really don't know who's going to take this down. LeBron is going to obviously respond to his poor game in Game 3. I think that Dwayne Wade is going to have to continue to contribute as much as he can on that bum knee.
Can Chris Bosh just show up?
Chris Bosh and Mario Chalmers, they need to contribute and step up. If the Miami Heat's role players don't step up, then the San Antonio can blow them out. And if they don't win Game 4, going back 3-1 in San Antonio, you're looking at a devastatingly quick exit in the NBA Finals. So San Antonio, like I said, in Game 3, just dominated in terms of getting off to the hot start. Kawhi Leonard, his defensive energy was unbelievable. Because if I told you that LeBron James would only score 8 points in the final 3 quarters, would you believe that?
No, I'd say you're smoking crack. I'd ask you what you're on. Like, are you on some type of Prozac drip? Did you write yourself a script? Did you take the whole bottle?
Exactly. So San Antonio, like I said, is well coached. They have one of the best coaches in history in Greg Popovich. But he's known to be a little bit ornery with the media. And because if you listen, they interview him at halftime after all these games, and he just gives like...
It's the best sound bites ever.
It is. I don't know why.
It's so awkward.
It's horrible. Just stop going up to him. He obviously is annoyed. He's trying. I think intention. I think before the game, I think he just goes to his boys and goes, "What kind of stuff can I say to these guys to piss them off?"
And you know what? At this point, I think it's all the giant show. I really do.
I believe it too. I think he's doing it on purpose.
Yes, it's all just a giant show. It's just him having fun with the media at this point. I really do believe that. I think it was last year or maybe 2 years ago, he made one of the halftime reporters cry. Like, she left like after the interview and she went and cried. And that story came out and he was like, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" I really do believe he does these things on purpose. It's entertainment. It's uncomfortable entertainment.
All right. Speaking of press conferences, so the Miami Heat just get rolled. They get crushed by San Antonio in Game 3 on their home floor. So they go to the press conference, and I watch him, and Erik Spoelstra goes up there, kind of starts off, the media asks the basic questions, and then this guy comes up and asks this ridiculous question. I want to play this for you. I want to get your reaction to this question during Game 3 of the NBA Finals press conference.
Bobby on the left.
Bobby Ramos, bottom line. Coach, you gave San Antonio the credit, and you mentioned a couple of times that you're in the finals. How does a team in their 4th finals come out in the finals, their first home game, and get beat to the ball, to get stomped the way they did? The kind of heart that your championship team has to come out tonight like they did mentally has to be something that's a problem.
Clearly.
All right, cuz, what'd you think of that? Obviously, Spoelstra looked at the guy and was like, "Clearly." And so this guy comes out and basically just dogs and basically, in not so many words, just says, "Why did you not prepare your team to get out on the floor?" And he did this to LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. He continued on, and so people on Twitter were laughing at him and said that he had a worse night than Mario Chalmers in terms of his question. So I just want to ask and talk about it a little bit in terms of, what my fear would be is I'm working so hard, I want to get a media credential, and I go up there and they put the microphone in my face, and then I freeze up and ask a terrible question like, "How do you feel about losing?" And the coach is like, "It sucks." And so I'd be terrified that I would freeze up like that. But what was your thought to that horrible question? And did you like Erik Spoelstra's one word, "Clearly"?
I want to address this from 2 different points of view. First off, I've done this before. I've had to ask these questions. I've had to ask the uncomfortable questions. It's difficult. It's hard. You're in an uncomfortable spot. You feel like everybody in the room is looking at you. I think his initial question that he wanted to ask, I think he could have presented it a better way. But you have to remember, going into a room like that, he already has his lead established, which is his opening paragraph. He already has his lead established. He's probably got the next 2 paragraphs already written out. So now he's looking for something to help fill in to bridge that gap between the 3rd and the 5th paragraph. That's generally where your first quote goes in journalistic writing. So he's looking to try to find something to bridge that gap. And if that answer is Erik Spoelstra's "clearly," then I guess he got what he was looking for. Do I think it was stupid or do I think it was inappropriate? No, these guys have a really tough job. The guys on the radio, guys on TV, it's a little bit easier because you just get to sit back and you get to make commentary on what these beat writers are doing. Being a beat writer is probably one of the more difficult jobs in the media. It sucks. You got to go in that room. You got to talk to these guys when these athletes just got hammered. And you got to talk to these coaches when these coaches don't want to give you anything. You've seen what Pop does, and you've seen Erik Spoelstra's comment to that question. So they're in a bad spot, and they've got to fill copy, and they've got to fill space, and they got to get this stuff to their publication as soon as possible because they're on a deadline. So I don't think it was a stupid question. I don't think it was inappropriate. Was it funny? Yes. Erik Spoelstra's remark to it was comical. And do I think he could have done a better job presenting his question? Absolutely, because he kind of stuttered a little bit through it, and I think maybe he had thought about asking the question, and then I think he maybe thought better of it, and then he said, you know what, I'm just going for it. And I think that's kind of why it came out a little bit stammerish and almost like he was stumbling initially. And I don't see a big problem with it. I don't think there was anything wrong with it. You're in the media. Ask your questions. These coaches have to answer those questions. And Erik Spoelstra did a shit job preparing his team for that game. They came out flat. LeBron James turned the ball over 7 times. Dwayne Wade sometimes disappears in these games. He just goes away. Chris Bosh, it'd be great if he could just show up for 2 games consistently. I mean, the guy showed up for game 2. Game 3, the guy's nowhere to be found. He's in a closet, trapped in a jacket, I think. I have no idea. So these guys on these teams have to show up and they have to be prepared, and obviously they weren't because that first quarter they got rolled by San Antonio. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that question. I thought it was funny. I thought it was comical, and I think he has the right to ask the question that he wants to ask.
Okay, you don't have to be specific, but have you ever been has a player or a coach clowned on one of your questions?
I've asked a question of a coach, and the coach just looked at me like, "You're really asking me this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of am." And he's like, he just kind of rolled his eyes, and he and continued to answer the question. So I mean, most of the time, these coaches know that as a beat reporter, you're in a kind of a tough spot, and you're just trying to do your job. So they sit there and they kind of go along with it for a little bit. But yeah, I've had that happen.
So let's say I do get enough courage to get my media credentials. What would you say would be some advice you would give me in terms of asking these questions? Because I see myself going 2 ways. Either I'm going to be so excited, I'm going to be like, wow, what a great performance, LeBron. And he's going to be looking at me like, cool, and walk off. Or I'm going to ask him like, so LeBron, you missed the shot. Do you feel like the fans are going to clown on you again on Twitter? And he's going to be like, listen, dude, boom, and just look at me and have a rant and be like, who is this clown? Because you know what? Jim Leland, and it's going to touch on where we're going to go with this. Mm-hmm. Jim Leland, if you asked him a question that he didn't like, would clown on you. And then, like I said, I'm a fan of Detroit sports radio, and he just would clown on Jeff Rieger all the time. I mean, Jeff Rieger would ask decent questions, and Jim Leland would just brush him off and have these 5-minute yelling sessions at the media. And I just don't want that to ever happen.
The best part was Rieger was doing his job, and Rieger does a very good job at what he does. And he asks the proper questions. He doesn't ask bad questions. That's just Jim Leland being Jim Leland. My advice to you, don't be buddy-buddy with them. The worst thing you can do, and the thing that can make you appear less qualified to do your job, is when you try to be friends with them and try to be buddy-buddy with them. Make your questions topical. You watched the game. You followed the game. You have a little bit of insight. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing the job that you're doing. So make the questions topical. Don't be buddy-buddy with them. And try to get to the point as quick as possible and let them answer.
So with that said, let's just talk a little bit about some classic press conferences in terms of in Detroit and nationally that you can recall, that we can just kind of share some memories. Now, in Detroit, we've had the privilege of having some great coaches and some great lines, some great memories of some press conferences that got out of hand or produced some lines that have lived in infamy. And so a couple that come to mind right away for me in terms of press conferences was when Wayne Fontes got fired. Rolls up there, everyone knows that, you know what, after his up and down career, he just walks up to the podium and goes, "What do you mean I'm fired?" and has this jovial press conference, and it just kind of was like, it was inevitable. He knew it, and he made light of the situation. And so it kind of was like, you don't see too many times when a coach gets fired coming up there with that kind of levity and having a little bit of humor with it. And so he was just gracious in terms of his devotion to Mr. Ford, the late Mr. Ford. And he just showed class. And so it was just a great, funny moment. And that press conference was memorable to me. Another one was, a lot of these have to do with the Lions, and it's kind of funny because they've had so much turmoil and their coaches are under so much pressure. We get Bobby Ross, and everyone in Detroit, I remember, was like, oh, we got Bobby Ross. He coached in the Super Bowl. He's going to take us to that next level. Collapse. And it just so happened that he just wasn't able to reach our best player in Barry Sanders, and a lot of people believe that he drove Barry Sanders out of Detroit. But after a game, I remember a press conference when he was like, "You think I coach that stuff? I don't coach that stuff." And that was a game when we had so many penalties, so many offsides, and he just was so frustrated and that he was ready to explode. And he comes in and he's waiting in the press conference and he's asking, "You think I coach that stuff?" Well, obviously, if the team is not disciplined, yeah, it's obviously a reflection of you. And he was that press conference was definitely memorable to me. And finally, one with Marty Mornhinweg. The bar is high. So
That's your favorite.
That's my favorite, and you hear that drop here on this podcast. But it just was the height of silliness. He comes in and, Matt Millen brings this brash offensive guy in, and they're riding off in Harleys, and in his press conference, he just comes out and says, "The bar is high here." And so that was kind of the
whole
tone.
thing with the hand too, like it's
just
up here above his head.
It just set the tone for criticism whenever the bar wasn't high, and the bar was really low for his whole tenure, especially starting off. I think his first season was like 2-14,
or taking the wind.
Yeah, you remember that? And they dumped Gatorade.
Against Arizona.
I think we lost 14 straight to start his campaign, and they won the first game, and they dumped Gatorade on him. And it was like, oh my Lord, what do we got going on here? This imbecile.
So bad.
What are some of your memories of some hilarious press conferences with our teams?
Well, I think the one that everybody remembers that got Rob Parker released was with Rob Marinelli. He asked Rod Marinelli if he wished that his brother-in-law was better as a defensive coordinator. I think that's what. Or no, his son-in-law was a better defensive coordinator. So that one was funny. I laughed at that. There was one with Chauncey Billups in 2005 at the NBA Finals. I think Greg Breacher stood up to ask Chauncey Billups a question. He introduces himself. "Hi, this is Greg Breacher from ESP, AP, and then just fumbles and just it goes silent and the room gets awkward. And this goes on for probably, I want to say it feels like an eternity, but it probably had to have been 10, 15 seconds. Chauncey Billups throws him a lifeline and is like, "We'll just come back to you. Is that cool?" And he was like, "Yeah, thanks." And just sat down. So that one was funny. When everything was going on with now Piston head coach Stan Van Gundy and Dwight Howard in Orlando, Stan Van Gundy's getting grilled by the media, and he's just getting grilled by them for probably 3 minutes straight, just fielding these questions about Dwight Howard chucking him underneath the bus. And Dwight Howard comes in, puts his arm around him, asking where the reporter who was supposedly putting out these, in finger quotations, false reports about him chucking him underneath the bus, going to the general manager, telling him that they want Stan Van Gundy fired. And Stan Van Gundy just kind of sits there, answers one more question, is like, am I good here, guys? Do you guys just want to talk to Dwight now? And just kind of slips out through the crowd of media, and Dwight is just left there holding the bag, having to answer all these questions. And then, of course, you've got the Denny Green, where if you want to crown them, the game where he was the Arizona head coach, and it was against the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears came back to beat Arizona. And then, of course, Herm Edwards, you play to win the game. Those are probably some of my favorites.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. So obviously there have been some legendary head coaches who have just been gruff and horrible with the media. You got Greg Popovich, you got Mike Ditka, who would really, really attack the media when they would ask him questions when he was with the Bears. And then you got one of the legendary tough head coaches in terms of Bill Parcells. Just in your opinion, who do you think was the worst head coach who really dogged the media? Who do you think gave the media the most difficulty in terms of what you've heard, in terms of this? Obviously Greg Popovich, his lore is kind of, in my opinion, is getting to that status because almost every press conference, he's kind of looking at the media like, really? Are you really that stupid? But you don't forget, Bill Parcells would really just, humiliate these reporters when he was with Dallas. I specifically remember a time when he would just literally not answer questions, would just say, "Are you really stupid to ask me that?" And so he would really, really make it tense and things like that. So is there one that you think is above the rest, above the crew in terms of being, kind of a dickhead in the media?
I'm gonna go a little bit off the page here, and he's coaching right now, and he's considered probably one of the best coaches of all time. And he learned underneath Bill Parcells, and that is Bill Belichick. That guy is...
I didn't even say Belichick. You got it.
That guy
dry.
Yes. Hard to get an answer from about anything.
You said it. I can't believe I didn't say that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
He's very condescending in his interviews. He tries to make the reporters feel smaller than, what they should feel. He makes them feel really bad about themselves for asking the questions that they have to ask. So I think he is probably one of the worst.
And but what he's good at though, when a media member doesn't get an answer that he likes, they kind of ask it in a different way. Mm-hmm. All he does is just stands up there and gives the same answer.
Same answer.
Same answer. So he knows the game, he understands it, and he just goes up there and just repeats the same answer. It gives them nothing, and so it's almost become a joke in terms of let's just hear Belichick's politically correct answer. Let's just ask him.
Yeah.
So could you imagine the questions though he's had to face in terms of Aaron Hernandez, why Rob Gronkowski is injured, why they bring in players like Chad Johnson. And so you don't get too many things, except sometimes the media tries to get him to kind of clown on his players. And so what they do is take his words and kind of maybe twist it a little bit to his players. But he does a good job in-house. They know what's going on, and they don't fall prey to those kind of traps.
He does a very good job with the media, even though he comes off as a dick. I was looking for a different word. I don't have a different word. He comes off as a jerk. Let's just call it what it is. Watch a Bill Belichick press conference. You just sit there and you're just gonna. It's horribly uncomfortable watching those, and you get nothing. You get absolutely zero. You'll get the injury report where half the injuries are made up and the other half don't even exist. It's amazing.
How much press conference usually do you listen to after a game? Do you wait 5 minutes, or you just kind of if it's someone that might go off? A lot of times if a player goes up there, they're gonna give the politically correct answer, and sometimes I like press conferences from the players from New York, because those guys are brutal, in Philadelphia too. Those guys, they ask questions in a direct way, and kind of in an assault.
Very, very
I thought you're supposed to be
face.
non-judgmental, and so they ask personal, direct questions like, "Why is your performance so bad? Does that mean that your career's over? Does that mean that you They add those judgmental leading questions, and so someone like me, I think, wow, would I have been able to handle it? And I think to myself, wow, I would have needed a PR person and be like, listen, talk to this guy here. Talk to my assistant Shelly here. She's going to answer on my behalf, and then she'll give the answers and be like, "Yep, exactly. I agree with her." I just didn't want to. I think, man, I would go off on these people and get myself fines. It's just because every single day you got to answer these questions, and you got to do it well. And sometimes these players, they fall prey quickly, and and nowadays with social media, you get a great quote. The guy tweets it out. It can be retweeted 1,000 times within 5 seconds, and the whole world knows it.
Everybody knows it, and everybody's running with it.
And everybody's judging it, and not even... Right now, it's print the story, ask questions later, whatever the reaction. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So that was interesting, and like I said, it added spice to the NBA Finals. But you said it yourself, you believe that San Antonio was going to win it. Judging after the first 3 games, you still believe that?
I do. After the first game, I left feeling very confident about my selection for San Antonio. Game 2 rolled around, and I was disappointed. But I was like, okay, no big deal. I didn't expect them to sweep Miami. And then after Game 3, it cemented my conviction that I do believe San Antonio will win this thing. It's hard with the Heat because for the most part, the Heat are a 2-man show. Mario Chalmers doesn't show up. Chris Bosh doesn't really show up. And then who else you got out there? You got Birdman. I mean, the guy's, heroin overdose away from being dead. So what do you really got there? It legitimately is Batman and Robin, and then you've got this cast of schlubs. So I don't think Miami's deep enough. And if only Dwayne Wade and LeBron are going to show up, they have no chance in hell.
Okay. Like I said, this is a good sport. It was a good sports week in terms of we got so much going on. We got the World Cup, the U.S. Open, golf is going to start on Thursday as well. You got the NBA and NHL finals. So I want to bring up something.
Sure.
Our number 1 fan, Taylor, I want to bring it up, and I'm going to give him an open challenge too.
Okay.
He noticed that I did it, and I just did it again. He noticed, and he messaged me that I was supposed to say the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. And that last week and this week, I just kind of took the easy road, and I said NBA NHL Finals. So, Taylor, I appreciate that, and you can correct me anytime you want. And if he does, I'll bring it up here on this podcast. You can, anyone, if we make a mistake, Adam and I aren't perfect, message us. We'll bring it up. We don't mind. We crack jokes on each other all the time. And so if we make a mistake, if we say something that is blatantly wrong and you find out, shoot me a message and I'll give you credit for it. But I know Taylor Phillips is listening, and we appreciate his support. And I will say, you have the NBA Finals. You have the NHL Stanley Cup Finals going on, the U.S. Open, the World Cup, Tigers baseball. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot on the menu, and I've just been really kind of excited, in this spring. And I'm looking forward to all these things. I just can't wait for the next month to go down.
We mess up, you message us, we'll retweet your message, and then we'll sit there and we'll tweet out the correction too.
Like I said, Adam and I, sometimes we do this podcast while we are consuming an alcoholic beverage. So that's why we love doing it. We just get to we have no rules. We just go off the cuff, and we get a chance to talk about all the great topics. So it's been all good, cuz. It's a good week.
Episode 100, we'll be doing this in our underwear and drinking bottles of booze.
Or it'll just be like, okay, Tim and Frazier, you are on the podcast. Steve and Frazier, where are you at? Call us up. We'll be back, and you will have no opinion from us.
Just let everybody call in and talk about whatever they want to talk about.
That's right. And let people just go on and don't cut them off. Let them have their own little 10-minute segment. But another great podcast, cuz 44 deep. We're building an audience. We love doing this, and I love that we get a chance to every week kind of wrap up what we've been thinking about in terms of sports. So is there anything cooking in your mind that you want to end the show with?
You know what?
Your Twitter page still looks ridiculous. When are you going to change it?
It looks sexy, and
I just don't know, for a sports guy to be styling and profiling in a tuxedo and a loving picture
Tom
with your
Brady
wife.
gets away with it. And my Twitter profile pic, I look quite GQ-esque. So if Tom Brady can roll that way, I can roll that way too.
Okay, so how long are you going to keep it?
I don't know. I'm supposed to be getting like wedding pictures here soon. So as soon as I get more wedding pictures, there'll be ones of me rolling around in a Spider-Man T-shirt, or ones of me not looking as dapper. I've got probably, there might even be one of me in my underwear. Who knows? So it's just a little bit. Give it a little bit.
So it's safe to say with the next week coming up, you're going to be focused on the World Cup?
Oh yeah, I do.
Okay. World Cup.
I've been gearing up for this for probably 3 months now. Like, okay. I can't wait for it. Okay,
then to wrap up the show, one question. By this time, by episode 45, are the Tigers in first place?
Episode 45 is next week, eh? They have, what, a 3-game lead right now, yeah?
2.5, yeah, I think okay. 2.5.
It's right around 3. You know what? Yeah, because they're playing the Twins this weekend. Yeah, I'm gonna say next week at this same exact time, they will be clutching on to first place.
All right. With that, podcast number 44 of the Detroit Sports Podcast comes to an end. And for the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you for downloading this podcast. We greatly appreciate it. Subscribe weekly on iTunes so you don't miss a thing. Thank you very much. See you all next week.
Go Kings, World Cup. Yay!
The bar is high. Hell, it's even higher. It's even higher.
Cuz, here's to you, buddy. Coors Light, just for you.
Oh,
cheers.
Thanks.